Hi everyone, welcome to the latest edition of the Financial Planner. I hope this finds you all safe and well. I hope you all had the opportunity to watch Emma's last video with one of our clients, Maggie Smock. I thought that was a great watch in terms of a real life experience from a client who has gone through, I guess, big turbulence before in the 2007-8 crash, and of course what's happened since and all the emotional feeling throughout that time. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, please do, because I think you'll find it really useful. And it just adds to your own experience, of course. What I want to cover off today is actually going slightly onto a different topic. Let's be honest, not necessarily the most happiest of topics, which is that of protection. Now, before you decide to not watch this video, because protection refers to things such as life cover, critical illness cover, private medical cover, etc., I do want to just make sure that this actually covers all of our lives, and regardless of what stage you are at in your life. So whether you are younger, with a young family, with a mortgage, and effectively debts and bills to pay should anything happen to you through illness or of course death. But equally for the people watching this who have gone throughout their life, have no longer got any of those debts, the kids have left home, it's often used for estate creation, it's often used for leaving money to pay an inheritance tax bill. So protection, which I'm just going to touch on through a very real life experience of my own and how it works, I think has a valuable part to play in everyone's lives. I equally just want to let you know that following this on Tuesday, we're going to have a question and answer session with Oakwood Solicitors and with Charlotte Bandaway. And I think that's quite useful because that's going to start talking in a two-part series about wills and how those should be amended and put in place if you have needs to change them. And also then following on to powers of attorney and the purpose of these and what we should be looking to have to complete our overall financial planning. So again, there's a theme coming in the next couple of videos with regards to this. Like I said, not the cheeriest of topics. So unfortunately, if you've tuned in for a little bit of humour, there's not a lot in this bit, but there is a good news story. So equally, just bear with me. So I hinted at this being a topic that's relatively close to my heart, and I guess it is more so than ever due to what I went through personally. Now, some of you know me really well and some less so well. Obviously, we're now a couple of years since this happened, but I was on a work trip in Abu Dhabi and was suddenly taken ill. And very long story short, had a version of a stroke, which still makes me feel quite queasy talking about it now. And that was due to a hole in my heart, which I'd had since I was born apparently, but never knew about, and a blood clot that travelled potentially from the flight in the form of a deep vein thrombosis that effectively travelled past through the hole in my heart and then effectively went to my head. Now, I'm very pleased, of course, to be able to say that with a young family and obviously many things that I'd still love to do in my life, that I've fully recovered. But at the time, of course, it unbelievably scary. And you find yourself in a foreign country, unable to fly home, surrounded by doctors, plugged into every machine possible, with people talking statistically at you about chances of death or further stroke, is not a pleasant part of your life. And I guess there will be people watching this, I know for sure have been through similar things, and I think let's take great pleasure in the fact that we're all here. But what did it mean in terms of how that links to the work that we do and how that was so beneficial at the time is, of course, back to how I protected both myself and my family. And this is what I'm urging you to do whilst you're watching this, to look at your own situation, check that it's still correct, ask if you're unsure if it isn't, but equally, please think of other people, your extended family, your own children, your own parents. Have they thought this through? Have they got this in place? So back to my situation, I'm eventually able to fly home. I'm then taken to a hospital to which to have my hole in my heart repaired, and having a heart operation is, of course, got many risks associated with it, but effectively going to have a period of time where I can't work. And of course, life still goes on behind it. We still have a business to run, I still have a mortgage to pay, and I still have the kids to look after alongside my wife. So therefore, what did I have? What did I use at that time, and how efficient was it? Well, if I run you through my scenario, I of course and insist with clients that I had life cover in place. Now the good news is here, I never used it, because you've got to die to use your life cover, and in actual fact, I'm delighted I never had to call on it. What I did have, however, was critical illness cover. And this is equally important when you're looking at having a period of time where you're unable to work, that you have a cash injection of money that effectively comes into the household tax-free, that then enables you to continue with no monetary worries. Because believe you me, the last thing you want to think about that time is money. You want to think about getting better, you're constantly thinking about your own health, you're worrying about your children and hopefully seeing them grow up. So money is not something that even wants to enter your head. But critical illness cover is really important at that time. Now my own experience and people's pessimism sometimes or potential criticism of these types of cover is, well, would they actually pay out? So when I'd arrived back from Abu Dhabi, I'd been back 10 days and my entire critical illness personal cover that I had in place paid out in full into my bank account. No debate, no issues, because all we had to supply was the doctor's notes from the Cleveland Clinic in Abu Dhabi, and there really is nothing to then have any prolonged conversation about with regards to the insurance company. It's very factual, and that's what happens. So in your own scenario, how would that be felt? Now, many people, of course, will have some form of sick pay at work, or they'll have death in service, or they'll have something that gives them some form of security to think that that would be okay. But does it cover all of your needs? If you were off for a prolonged period, if you were off for 6 months, 8 months, 12 months, if you had a form of cancer, and the stats around that suggest that recovery could be anything from 18 to 24 months, how do you cope as a family? How do you cope as an individual? How do you financially get through that time? Most employers, if you're employed, of course, have a sick policy, but will nowhere near cover that time scale, and potentially find yourself on statutory sick pay. So please do take note about the situation you find yourself in. From a life cover perspective, as I joked, and again, I'm very conscious of joking about something so serious, I still retain my life cover, and I made sure that I reassessed that when I got back. Have I left enough? Have I left enough, should anything now happen to me again, that they can live the same lifestyle and cover all their needs that we've become accustomed to? Now, that isn't about materialistic things. These things are nice, I guess, of course, but it's about the simple things. It's about the gas, the electricity. It's about not putting undue pressure on my wife. It's about ensuring that silly little things like Christmases and school trips and opportunities and first weddings and first cars, have I left enough in a scenario to cover all bases? So again, I urge you to think about that logically and put that down on a piece of paper, what your need would be, and have that conversation again with us if you're at all concerned. Now, when we look at other things that I had in place, I equally had unbelievable travel insurance. And again, please ask if you're unsure about that. Anybody who takes out Money Supermarket travel insurance for £5 and thinks they've got a great policy, please be very wary. You certainly wouldn't want it to have been where I was in Abu Dhabi, not having really good cover in place. But when you arrive at a Cleveland Clinic hospital, which is honestly better than any 6-star hotel I've ever seen, and the doctor comes in and reassures you within 5 minutes of seeing you that they have every machine in the world to test you on in that building, then you suddenly feel better within the space of 5 minutes. So again, looking at your travel insurance, looking at the quality of it, etc. If you've got any questions around that, we have numerous providers who we would recommend. And then equally, going on to your private medical. Since I've got back, of course, I've had an operation, I've had various tests, I've had every scan I think under the sun. And all of this, as people who've gone through this and from previous rugby injuries, I know it has mounting costs in terms of how expensive this treatment is. So again, do you have that appropriate cover in place to give you that peace of mind? And insurance, as a reminder, should not be something that every month you look at and go, why the hell do we pay that? It's so expensive. It's not about having cover for cover's sake. If you review your scenario and you have adequate cover, or you actually have excess cover, you've just accrued it over years. If you've got brilliant scheme benefits from your work and now you don't need your own personal cover, you might be in a whole different situation than where you were 5-10 years ago. Assess it, write it down on paper, Let's have a one-to-one conversation with one of us, and let's go through whether it's right or wrong for you at this time. The final comment I would make is with regards to people who I mentioned at the beginning, talking about using it for things like inheritance tax planning and or estate creation. Understanding what cover is appropriate for those needs is really important. Looking at why it might be useful, if you can never eradicate your entire inheritance tax bill, to put life cover in place that will pay the bill on your behalf so you don't leave that burden on your children, is equally something that is not as expensive as you think, is something which you can put in place which will guarantee to pay out, and again is appropriate for a lot of people in their different planning situations. So, in a nutshell, here's the good news. I'm still here. I think that's good news for most people watching. I get to see my kids grow up. Certainly at this stage, I feel very fortunate and very lucky about that for sure. But I don't ignore the fact that it was a huge bolt. It was a huge sense check. It made me question my mortality. And I guess COVID-19 is doing the same for many people now that I'm chatting to. So following this, please look at your own situation. Ask the questions you may have. Watch Tuesday's seminars on wills and probate just to make sure that you feel comfortable that your basics are tidy and that you've effectively got everything in order, to ensure that we don't allow you to climb up this ladder that you've taken your life to effectively create the lifestyle that you've got, or you're continuing up this path. That good cover, good protection should always put a wedge behind you as you're going up that ladder to ensure that you can never fall backwards. Our job as advisors, we firmly believe, and having felt it myself, is to protect you at all times. It's great worrying about whether we're going to have enough money in retirement, or whether we've got enough in ISAs, or whether we're going to be able to take advantage of the investment markets. But in reality, the core thing about what this is teaching us again is look after your loved ones, look after yourself. What would happen tomorrow if the worst possible happened? And have you implemented a strategy that stops you falling back to square one and putting those people that you love the most under undue pressure? Hope that helps. Let's see what Boris brings on Sunday with regards to whether we can all now have a new bubble that we can all socialise with. Joking aside, stay safe. We're all very much in it together still. All the very best for now.